Legends over here. I just wanted to quickly cover today a quick tip on how to touch through a front wheel. You know, a lot of times you ride, you hit bumps, whatever, dips, ruts and different things. Over time your wheel gets a little wobbly, and today I want to show you how to do the front wheel. Now my wheel has bladed spokes, so it's a little more, there's one extra step. If you don't have bladed spokes, you ignore the other step I'm going to do. First thing I want to show you is I've brought my brakes, I made them really close to the tire right there. I basically screwed this in to where they're close to the tire. I'm going to use them as a truing stand. I mean, I have an actual truing stand in the workshop, but I wanted to do the video because most people don't have a truing stand and they can just use their brakes. So get your brakes pretty close, make sure they're centered. If you look at the spacing on my brakes, let me move the camera so you can see. Let's see. It's going to be a little tricky to get light between the brakes. See that? You see the distance on this side? Look at the distance on that side. That's what you want. You want the brakes to be close. If they're not centered, you can move the entire caliper and get them centered. You know, just move the caliper and center them. Once you get them close enough, you want them within to where it's smaller than you can put a dime in. You can see how close that is. You don't need to right up on the rim. Now I'm going to spin the wheel. And let me move it to where you can see the gap. Look here. See, at this point, you can actually, let's move the wheel here. Here, you can see that gap. I'm going to spin it right there. You see, it's actually rubbing at that point. I'm going to keep pulling it. Then you see it comes back. And it goes over here. It moves a little to the right. I'm going to start with that point. So right there, you hold it there. I'm going to move the camera away because I can't hold it in this position and do that. It's a little tricky for me. I might be able to. So I'm going to do it once more to find the spots that I need to touch through. And that's what you want to do. You'll be able to look at it better than I'm doing here. I'm going to spin it. Right there, you see where it's touching? It's touching on this side. So I'm going to look for the closest spoke to that area. And usually you'll have one somewhere here and one somewhere back there. So I'm going to move the wheel because I want to bring the wheel to this side, to the right, facing the bike. So now I'm going to move it to where, let's see, if I bring it here, there's a spoke right here. You see right here? There's a spoke here and there's a spoke on this side. So either one of those. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to put the wrench on it. So your spoke wrench, my spoke wrench is unusual because I got different size nipples on this wheel. Now you want to turn clockwise to tighten. So you want to tighten it to bring it to the side you want it to go on. If I wanted to move it to that side using this spoke, I would loosen to move it that way. So now I want to bring it over to this side. I'm going to tighten. So I'm going to go clockwise to get it off of that. So I'm going about a half turn. You hear it popping a little bit, it's tweaking. Because I have bladed spokes, I have to use this tool to straighten the spokes because I've got bladed spokes in this wheel. If you don't have to worry about it. So I brought it half a turn, and now I'm going to go grab the other spoke that's in the same area on this side and do half a turn there. You want to do a little bit at a time because you don't want to go too far over. So I'm going to put the spoke on there, spoke wrench on there. Yeah, this one is it's really loose. It's looser than the first one, so I'm going to tighten it a little more. And if I have to back out that other one, I will. It's very loose. That's the one that's causing the problem. So I probably should not have even adjusted the other one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to look between the wheel. Now, let me move the wheel so you can see. I tighten that one, and look. You see, now I have a gap on this side. Remember, it was touching the brake before. And I also have a gap on that side, right there. You can see now the wheel is centered. Just tightening that one. I'm going to hold. You got to hold the spoke if you have a bladed spoke. You got to hold it before you straighten the blade. So I'm going to put this tool on there to straighten the blade and make sure it's flat. And I'm going to take that out. So now that's centered in the wheel. You can see the gap. It was touching before. So I'm going to go over to this spoke that I brought over because I should not have brought it over. I'm going to back it off about the same amount to where it's straight. And you can see the gap? Right there near the spoke. That's how you do it. And now the blade is straight. So I'm going to spin it again so you guys can see. And I don't expect it to catch. It may have little dips, but you can see now. It's moving a little, but it's not catching anymore. You see that little dip right there? Right there. Right there. So I'm going to stop it. I'm going to spin it again and stop it where that dip is. Right there. So that tells me that I need to bring this, so you find the nearest spoke to it, and I'm going to tighten it clockwise, and I'm looking between the two brakes. It looks pretty centered. I'm going to hold it. Because I have bladed spokes, it's an extra step that I got to straighten the spoke. There's no point having bladed spokes all out of whack. I'm going to look at it. It looks like it's a little too far over, so I'm going to back it off a little bit. The same spoke. Looked like I pulled it too far over. I'm just using the brake as a gauge. It doesn't need to be perfect. You just want to gauge it. And you're doing it. They're little tweaks. Now I'm going to spin the wheel again. Let me see if I can turn it so you can see the gap right there. See that? There's one. Yeah, right there. Right there. And there's a spoke right there. There's a spoke right at that spot, so that makes it easy. I'm just going to tighten that spoke because I want to bring it to the right. I'm going to tighten it until I can see equal gaps right there. Now you notice I'm doing everything on one side of the wheel. That's really ideal because then you don't mess up with your dish. Dishing is what makes the wheel centered when you put it in the bike. So it's always best to just work with one side of the wheel because usually it will be one side. Now I'm going to spin it again. I don't know if you guys can see that. See that? There's just a little bit of the thing right there, catch. I like to spin it and make sure I'm getting, I don't know if you can see that. Let me turn it this way. There. The thing you have to be careful about is that you're not fooled by the tire. Because when you have a tire on the wheel, some tires may make you think that your wheel is out of whack. So you got to look at the wheel, the rim, not the tire. That's another thing to be careful about when you're doing it outside of a truing stand. Because the tire can kind of trick you to thinking that your wheel's off. So I'm actually looking at the rim. Now look at that. Look at that. Remember how we started? Then remember, don't look at the tire. Look between the rim. So I'm looking at the rim, and it looks pretty good. What you're seeing is the tire. So what I do in that case, I move the brakes even closer. One more turn, and see if it catches anything. And I'm looking actually between the brakes. Let me move it so you can see here. So what you're seeing there is the tire. That's the challenge with trying to do it on the bike, is that the tire can trick you. Now on this side here, there's a little bit of a movement to the right. So I'm going to back it up. I think it was that first spoke that I brought over. So it's a bit of a science. It's not an exact science. That's why most people would take the wheel off. If you took it to the shop, or if you brought it to me to fix, I would put it on the truing stand because I have two little blades that sit right above the rim. And it's more specific. It rules out the tire, the imperfections of the tire. I see a bit of a movement. Let's see, 1, 2, just a bit over to that side. So I'm going to tighten this one to the right. So you want to tighten in the direction that you want the wheel to go, and you loosen in the direction you want away from the spoke. So now, I don't know if you can see, let me move this way. I'm going to open the brake so you can tell. Just the little tweaks that we just did for this exercise. Let's see here. Do I have any space there? I'll move the brakes back a little bit to where you can put a nickel. And I want you to see, look at that. Remember how when we started it was touching? Look, forget about the tire itself. Look between that space. That's what you want. That's a trued wheel. And you didn't have to take the wheel off the bike or anything. So to summarize, when you find that you have a problem on this side, you want to find the closest spoke to the problem. If there is a spoke on this side of the wheel, and the wheel is leaning on this side, you want to bring the wheel to the other side, you will loosen this spoke. If you find that the problem is at a spoke on this side, if the wheel needs to go to this side, then you would tighten this spoke. So you tighten the spoke on the side you want the wheel to go to, and you loosen the spoke for the wheel to go to the opposite side. So I'm going to say that again. As you go around, you got spokes on both sides of the wheel. So if the wheel right here is on the left and it's touching that brake over here, and there's a spoke right near that area that's touching, and the spoke is on the opposite side, that means you need to move the wheel away from this brake. You will tighten the spoke on the opposite side. If you need to move the wheel on this side, you loosen the spoke to bring it on that side if the spoke is away from the side you want to go to. It's kind of confusing, so that's why I'm summarizing. So the simple way I can say it is, to get the wheel to go in the direction where the spoke is, you tighten the spoke. To get the wheel to go in the direction away from the spoke closest to that area, you loosen the spoke. And what determines whether you loosen or tighten is based on where the wheel sits. If the wheel is on this side and the spoke is on the same side, then you will loosen the spoke. That means the spoke is too tight. So if the wheel is on the same side of the spoke and is rubbing, then you want to move the wheel away from the spoke by loosening. But if the wheel is on the opposite side of the spoke and you want to bring the wheel to that spoke, you will tighten the spoke to bring it there if the spoke is in that spot. So I hope this will help some of you, because it is something that you got to play with. Just remember that you tighten by going clockwise, because you're working upside down. So if you put the spoke here, you got to tighten clockwise. But you're only going to tighten in the direction you want the wheel to go, and you loosen in the direction you want the wheel to go. And choosing the spoke, you want to find the spoke closest to that part of the wheel that is causing the wobble, that has the wobble. So I hope that's clear enough. I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and I hope you guys benefit from this tip. The process is the same on the rear. But on the rear, remember, on the cassette side, the tension is a lot tighter on that side. It is the same process. You want to still tighten the spoke to bring the wheel to where you want that spoke to be. In other words, if the wheel is away from the spoke, rubbing on the brakes, and that spoke that's closest to that spot is on the opposite side, you have to tighten to bring that wheel to it. But if both the imperfection and the spoke are on the same side, then you have to move the wheel away by loosening the spoke. That means that the spoke was too tight. So I hope that's clear. I hope it doesn't confuse any of you. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and stop this video.